Some of the most repeated Excel advice you'll hear online is just wrong. People say these things with so much confidence that you start to believe them, and over time you end up avoiding features that would actually make your work faster, cleaner, and easier to maintain. So today I'm busting 9 of the most common Excel myths with the real story behind each one, so you stop second guessing yourself. Let me know in the comments which one surprised you the most or which myth you used to believe. You've probably heard that volatile functions like these are bad for performance because they recalculate whenever Excel recalculates, even if their inputs haven't changed. That can slow a workbook down, but does that mean every volatile formula is dangerous? Let's put them to the test. In this file, I've got 4 volatile formulas. Editing any cell will trigger all 4 formulas to recalculate, even though they don't depend on one another. Watch what happens when I F2 to edit a cell and press enter. Yep, nothing. Because a few volatile formulas aren't the problem people make them out to be. But here's where it gets ugly. In column J, I've got a sum product formula with nested offsets, and it goes down 10,000 rows. Let's F2 to edit the first cell and press enter. Check out the status bar. I only entered one formula, but it's calculating every cell containing offset, and it's super slow. That's the slowdown people warn you about. Volatile functions aren't automatically a problem, but when you use them thousands of times across large ranges, Excel has a lot more work to do. So the better rule is use volatile functions when they solve the problem well, but avoid building huge calculation chains around them. The worst offender I see overused is indirect. If you have files with indirect, check out this video on alternatives to indirect that walks through better modern alternatives that are faster, more reliable, and easier to maintain. This is one I hear all the time. Someone's workbook is slow, they've got tables in it, so the tables get the blame. Let's see if that holds up. Here I've got a table with 50,000 rows and 10 columns of data. It includes order ID, date, regions, products, customers, quantities, prices, a formula to calculate the revenue, and an XLOOKUP for the category. Now 50,000 rows is large enough to be realistic for many business workbooks, but still small enough that Excel should be able to handle it comfortably. Let's force it to reinsert the XLOOKUP formula. So I've just got one here. I'm going to F2 to edit it, press enter, and the table will copy it down. So it just inserted and calculated 50,000 formulas pretty fast. Let's change one of the categories and see how it handles that. The formulas recalculate almost instantly, so the table itself is not the problem. That said, when tables were first introduced, they could be slow with larger datasets, so this myth did have some truth behind it at one point. But those performance issues were fixed years ago, and the stigma has stuck around longer than the problem. What usually happens is this. A workbook contains a table. The workbook is slow, so people assume the table is the cause. But in many cases, the real problem is what's inside the table or around it. For example, lots of lookup formulas, nested if formulas, volatile formulas, array formulas, conditional formatting, or formulas that reference huge ranges unnecessarily. So don't blame the table just because it's there. Check what Excel's being asked to calculate. Now that we have functions like group by, pivot by, and filter, you might think pivot tables are no longer needed. And to be fair, these functions are fantastic. For example, group by can summarize sales by category, pivot by can lay out a cross-tab report, and filter can return the exact records we want. So if you're building a custom report with a specific layout, dynamic array formulas can be a brilliant solution, but that doesn't make pivot tables redundant. It just means we now have more than one way to solve the problem. Pivot tables are fast, interactive, and ideal for exploring data. In just a few clicks, I can summarize sales by category and product, and immediately see where the numbers are coming from. And if I want to look at the data differently, I don't need to write a formula. I can simply change the fields. I can add a slicer. It'll be hiding behind my pivot table. Let's bring it up here, and we'll quickly format it and slot it above the report. And now I can filter to get just the view I want. And if I want to drill down and find out more details about a particular number, I can just double click on the cell and Excel loads the transactions into a new sheet for me. And that's something formulas can't replicate as quickly, especially when you're still trying to understand the data. So use dynamic arrays when you need a custom formula-driven report, and use pivot tables when you need fast, flexible, interactive analysis. Myth number 4 is Excel can only handle small datasets. Now, a worksheet is limited to 1,048,576 rows and 16,384 columns. So yes, the grid has a hard limit, but that doesn't mean Excel as a tool is limited to small datasets. In this file, you can see the Queries and Connections pane shows that I've loaded 2 million rows of data, and that data is stored in the Power Pivot data model. You can see it's in this table here. So back in Excel, I can analyze that data in a pivot table that draws on that data in the data model. We'll pop it in here, and let's bring the field list over closer. Here's my table. Let's look at the product in the rows. Let's count the order IDs. You can see there are 2 million of them. We'll sum the units and the revenue. And notice how responsive this is. Excel's data model is designed to store and analyze much larger datasets than a worksheet can hold. And once the data's in the data model, I can build pivot tables, as you've seen, create charts, add slices, and write DAX measures, which are formulas designed for this type of analysis. So next time you're working with large datasets, instead of putting it in a worksheet, use Power Query to connect to and shape the data, load it to the Power Pivot data model, and analyze it with pivot tables, charts, and measures. Whole column references are another one of those rules people repeat without context, but whole column references are not automatically bad. This advice comes from a real performance concern. In older versions of Excel, the worksheet grid was much smaller, but in Excel 2007, it expanded to over 1 million rows. Formulas that forced Excel to calculate an entire column suddenly had a lot more cells to process, and that's why whole column references got such a bad reputation. But modern Excel is smarter about this in many cases. For simple functions like sum, count, countif, SUMIF, and some SUMIFs formulas, Excel can often handle whole column references efficiently because it recognizes the used range in the column rather than blindly processing every single row. So formulas like these can be perfectly reasonable, but this formula is a different story. Some product processes the arrays you give it, so with whole column references, you're asking it to process over 1 million rows in each column, and if you use formulas like that across lots of cells, the calculation load can add up very quickly. Whole column references can also be risky when the column contains headings, notes, other totals or old data, or future entries that shouldn't be included in the calculation. So you can safely say that whole column references are fine for simple formulas where the column is clean and the function handles the range efficiently. But for heavier formulas like sum product, array formulas, complex conditional logic, or formulas repeated many times, use a table or properly bounded range instead. And if this kind of formula nuance is exactly what you want to get better at, then my Advanced Excel Formulas course is designed for you. It covers lookup functions, dynamic arrays, logical formulas, error handling, text functions, named ranges, and more, and with practice files so you can apply what you learn straight away and support from me when you need it. You'll find the link in the description. Now, myth 6 is never format whole rows or columns, as it will make your file huge. This one sounds logical, which is why it's stuck around. The idea is that if you format an entire row, column, or worksheet, Excel must be storing information for every single cell, which means your file's going to become huge. But that's not always how it works. Formatting cells in a large range can create a lot of stored formatting information, especially if the formatting is inconsistent or fragmented. But when you apply formatting at the row or column level, Excel can store that formatting more efficiently because it applies to the row or column as a unit. And here's an interesting quirk that reveals how Excel layers formatting. Here I've got the whole row formatted green. Let's add a single cell formatted in purple. And if I cut that cell and paste it somewhere else, you can see underneath the formatting is still green. And that's because the row level formatting was still there underneath. The purple cell had its own formatting applied on top, and once that cell level formatting was removed, the underlying row formatting appeared again. So the takeaway is consistent whole row or column formatting is fine. What you want to avoid is fragmented formatting of large cell ranges that are far outside the actual data. Myth number 7 is that saving as an Excel binary workbook always makes a file better. And this one is easy to believe because xlsb files can sometimes reduce file size and improve save speed, especially with large formula-heavy workbooks. But the key word here is sometimes. Here I've saved the same workbook in two formats, xlsb and xlsx. In this case, the binary workbook is actually slightly larger. Not by much, but it proves the point xlsb is not automatically smaller or better. The result depends on what's inside the file. Some workbooks compress very well as .xlsx, others benefit more from the binary format. Here's how the two formats compare. xlsx is often already efficient because it's compressed, and as we just saw, it may be similar in size to xlsb or even slightly smaller. xlsb, on the other hand, can reduce file size in some large, formula-heavy workbooks, but you only know that if you test it. For open and save speed, xlsx is usually fine for normal workbooks, but very large files can take longer, whereas xlsb can be faster to open and save, which is one reason it can be useful for large files. But compatibility matters too. xlsx is more familiar, more widely expected, and generally safer when you're sharing files with other people. xlsb is less common, and because it stores the workbook in a binary format, it may not work as smoothly with every external system, auditing tools, document management systems, or sharing workflows. There's also the trust factor. A standard xlsx file cannot contain VBA macros, so it generally feels safer to recipients. But xlsb files can contain macros, so some people and organizations may treat them with more caution, even if your file doesn't contain any macros. And there's a Power Query caveat too. If your workbook contains queries, or especially if other queries connect to this workbook as a source, xlsb isn't always the best choice. It can work, but xlsx is usually the safer and more compatible format for Power Query workflows. So, don't judge the format only by file size. Use xlsb when you have large internal workbooks, and you've tested that it genuinely improves the file size or performance, but don't use it as a default. For most shared workbooks, xlsx is still safer and more compatible. Myth 8 is helper columns are amateur. A single giant formula can look impressive, but it may be harder to debug and easier to break. Whereas splitting that same formula over helper columns can make logic easier to understand, test, audit, and maintain. And it can improve performance because Excel can calculate intermediate results once instead of repeating the same logic inside multiple formulas. So, helper columns are not amateur. They're often the professional choice, making the workbook clearer, faster, and easier to maintain. Myth number 9 is that you need VBA to automate Excel. And this one has been around for a long time because for many years VBA was the main automation tool in Excel. If you wanted to automate a task, you recorded a macro or wrote VBA code. And VBA is still powerful. It's especially useful when you need buttons, custom workbook behavior, event-driven actions, user forms, or tasks that interact directly with the Excel interface. But automation in Excel is much broader than VBA now. For example, if the task is cleaning and reshaping the same export every month, Power Query is usually a better fit than VBA. If the task is automatically expanding formulas when new rows are added, you may not need code at all. An Excel table can do that for you. If you're creating a report that updates when inputs change, formulas, tables, pivot tables, and slices may already give you the automation you need. If your workflow involves gathering data from multiple files, then Power Query is hands down the best tool. If you want a button that clears a form, creates a PDF, moves data from one sheet to another, opens a custom user form, or responds when someone changes a cell, that's exactly the type of job VBA was designed for. But if the task needs to run in Excel Online, connect to other apps, or trigger a workflow in the cloud, Office scripts or Power Automate may be more appropriate. If you regularly import CSV files, remove unwanted columns, fix data types, split text, merge files, or reshape data, Power Query is the best tool. So the myth comes from treating automation as one thing, but automation can mean lots of different things, and each of those jobs has a different best tool. And that's the perfect place to go next, because one of the easiest ways to automate repetitive Excel work has nothing to do with code. If you're still copying, cleaning, and combining files manually, Power Query can do that work for you. So watch this video next, where I'll show you how to automate boring Excel tasks with Power Query. I'll see you there.